Good day, everyone. My name is Maria Kądzielska, and you are watching Poland Daily Culture. Sir Roger Scruton was a philosopher, public commentator, and an author of over 40 books. He also became a very dear friend of Poland. He has left us recently after a struggle with lung cancer. Today with me in the studio is Jonathan Price, one of his former students and now a doctor in philosophy. Jonathan, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
But before we start with the interview, let's hear what Sir Roger has to say.
The message that art has been perpetrating for the last 50 or even 100 years, that in the end, that our aspirations to be something better are all self-deception and delusion. Of course, there is natural beauty, and there's the beauty of the human face and the human form, there's the beauty of animals and the beauty of landscape. Everybody is aware of that. It stands there as an independent witness to the meaning of the universe.
Roger Scruton was a chairman in Building Better, Building Beautiful Commission, a very funny name. And later he gave an interview and it became a scandal and he was removed. Why did it happen?
It's unclear why it happened, but we now know what happened. And ironically, we know this because someone's computer was hacked and the tapes came out. Otherwise, he might never have been restored to the commission. What happened was the New Statesman, a magazine that he had written for many years, he wrote a wine column, but a notable lefty publication, sent one of their young reporters over and gave an interview about the republication of a number of Sir Roger's books on the occasion of his 75th birthday. That interview, which was done in his apartment in London, was recorded. But what was actually published and advertised on Twitter was that he had said all kinds of things, all kinds of wicked things about, for instance, the Chinese, that the Chinese were just copies of one another, as if they were some sort of robots or things of that sort. What had happened was there was a very selective use of quotes, such that a clause that said one thing and would be shocking on its own was not placed with its modifiers or with the entire sentence or with. So it's elementary journalism that one doesn't do this. You know, the first day of journalism school, one learns never to do something like this.
Of course, if you take the statement out of the context, then, for example, you don't say that you disagree with that, or it's, I don't know, what the person meant.
Because the Conservative Party, it tends to be limp and unable even to defend its own principles and its own thinkers. Eventually, Downing Street was bowled over and through Twitter without checking the facts, and they relieved him of this role on the commission.
But he was accused of being intolerant, of being an anti-Semite, anti-Muslim, and everything which is possible. And I've listened to some of British members of the parliament who were actually given even like attacks of fury that he should be removed. Why they hate him? Why they fear him so badly as well?
Sir Roger had a first-class mind. The kind of things that happened to him could never happen to people like me or others who are second-hand dealers in ideas. He was someone that it was an inconvenient truth for people on the left. They've gotten used to the idea, and it is often true, that those on the right are part of the party of the stupid. They're clinging to, their Bibles and guns, or to their little England, or to their little nation, or to these small things against progress. And then you have this person who pops up who's eloquent and learned, who's a polymath, who knows more about culture than these people have had time to even consume, who's remembered more than they've consumed, who has written more books than they've read, and this is very inconvenient, and so something has to be done to end the scandal of Roger Scruton. I think that was some that was behind it. In the time that I knew him best, he had moved from being somewhat of a pariah in England, of the old Thatcherite variety, of someone who supports these manifestly wicked things that we should leave behind, to someone who was somewhat institutionalized. He'd come back from America. He'd come into Oxford University. He was regularly in the press again. He had a BBC documentary on beauty. He was eventually on the Queen's birthday list, knighted. Yeah, who knows? He might end up in the House of Lords. Right. This is the dangerous thing.
And then a conservative way of thinking brought to academia and the first line of putting ideas as well and thinking things through. And then he got charged with being anti-Semite, being anti-Muslim, being anti-everything, which shows a little bit how intolerant British politics is.
Britain has never had a real revolution. And so it's not probably scared enough of itself. Yeah. But there are, I think, temptations toward totalitarian thinking amongst many, and they often will use the devil words of phobias against their enemies, often when they have nothing else, no other argument, no other way. If there were some sort of violent revolution or clashes or things like that, Britain, and especially the English part, is temperate. That I think there would be a correction, but it's been mercifully saved from revolution the way the continent hasn't. And so things are possible in Britain at sometimes, forms of social exclusion of certain kinds of thoughts, which are rarer on the continent. Said differently, I've happily existed as a conservative in Holland for years, saying things that in Britain would have perhaps landed me in a police station. And I'm not entirely joking. And these weren't offensive things. These are the things that people say quietly to one another in Britain.
But it's very funny how hard it is to accept truth sometimes. And how we don't really want to hear it. And the other thing is that on one hand he's excluded from commission but beautiful building or whatever, building beautifully, but he's knighted by the Queen. And
well, the one happened first. He was knighted. Britain is a collection of institutions that don't always align with one another, which is advantageous. If everything were united and aligned with one another, it would be a one-party state and marching in lockstep. So it's a modern democracy that functions in that way. But it is the case that there are some institutions that will push back and include someone who has inconvenient or politically unacceptable views, and others that just won't. It's no accident that Oxford gave him a position. Some other universities, even some of the oldest, have been more reluctant to keep around thinkers who are rumored to say things that are currently politically unpopular. And Jordan Peterson, for instance, was removed from his position in Cambridge, as was a younger scholar, Noah Carroll, either for being seen with someone who had the wrong T-shirt on, or for what more or less amounts to attending a conference where people might have been thinking bad things.
And Scruton was thinking a lot of bad controversial things, which kind of shaken us up and made us think of things which we didn't think through, or we didn't put them in words. Because I think that's what's the most important also for the broader audience about Roger Scruton's books. They're not only directed to academia, to philosophers, but they are, and they could be written by just people who are not that much interested in philosophy, because they are written with a simple language. My
father, who actually got to meet Roger Scruton when I had my PhD defense, because Professor Scruton was on the committee. He's someone who has a technical background and never went to university. And he, after retiring, started to pick up Roger's books and has spent the past few years occasionally reading one that interests him. Some of them, aesthetics of music, are really for a specialist. That's It's clear. Others, on beauty, for instance, are for all of us. And he's an ordinary man an ordinary intelligent man, my father, and he's become a reader of Roger Scruton. I think that's happened all over the world.
Even if you are not fans of philosophy, or you even might be a little bit afraid of philosophy, Roger Scruton's books are for everyone, and they are also very nice to read and kind to read. So we very strongly encourage you to do it. And thank you for watching Poland Daily Culture.